Hey everyone, I'm Will. I've noticed a lot of people asking for EQ, compression, processing specifics, and so today I'm going to give us kind of starting points, a crash course on processing. These are not rules, this is just a guide, these are starting points. I should also say that getting the sound right at the source is incredibly important, if not more important than processing. So a good vocal into the right microphone, they're holding the microphone correctly, or a good pianist on a good piano sound through a good piano, good arrangement, good stuff like that is paramount. And I say that to say that's ideal, but not always realistic. So we're looking at a multi-track session that is realistic, not ideal. Let's start with a lead vocal.
Show us your glory. Show us your glory.
Pull a low cut up until it sounds ridiculous, and then pull it back.
Surrender, we fall down.
Bass cuts.
Show us your glory.
Just to clean up the vocal sound a bit. Just try to clean up that nasal mid-range as well.
Burning heart be holy ground.
You'll notice I'm doing something that many people call seek and destroy. I basically pull up a band until it sounds the worst and then sharp cut it.
Show us your glory.
And generally I do a overall high boost a bit just to accent the clarity of the voice. Now this voice also has some sharpness in the highs, and so what many people might be tempted to do would be to cut the highs overall. But that would lead to a muffled vocal sound. So instead I'm going to find what frequencies, what about the highs is sharp or abrasive, and then sharp cut that individually. This is the same process you would use for de-essing a vocal. You would find where that S syllable is and then sharp cut that, rather than cutting the highs as a whole.
Show us your glory. Show us your glory. In wonder and surrender we fall down.
If you have a dynamic EQ, this is also a great place to use it for a vocal like this, just to help control maybe where those peaks are. A dynamic EQ or a de-esser basically listens for a specific band and it compresses that band individually rather than the volume as a whole.
Show us your glory. Show us your glory.
From here, just soft ratio of about 3:1, but with a very soft knee, just puts those dynamics of the vocal in your control rather than you having to ride the fader on every syllable they sing.
Show us your glory. Show us.
For a vocal, I generally only add chorus and maybe a stereo echo on a female vocal. I rarely use reverb or echo on a male vocal. It just muddies the sound too much.
As we wait, show us your glory. Show us your glory. In wonder and surrender.
So where we were, with all the effects disabled, all the processing disabled.
Show us your glory. Show us your glory.
If you have a vocalist dedicated to harmony, you can surely mix them a little bit different than you would if someone was switching off between lead and harmony. So I'll show you what that looks like now.
Show us your glory.
Again, pull the low cut up till it sounds ridiculous.
Show us your glory.
Pull it
In
back.
wonder
Let's go
and
ahead and get that nasal
surrender we
region out.
fall down. Show us your glory.
We can be generous with the bass
Show us your
cuts.
glory in every birth.
And because this is a vocalist dedicated to just harmony, we can actually cut the highs past about 10K. That way, the only thing up there is the air from the lead vocal and maybe like the cymbals.
Show us your
With a slight
glory.
presence boost around 5K.
Show us your glory in wonder
Again, squish it
and
just to put the dynamics in your
surrender we
control.
fall down. Show us your glory.
And another harmony. We'll mix this one as if this one does a lead at another song.
Show us your glory.
Pull up till it sounds
Show
ridiculous, and
us
then pull
your
it back till it sounds better.
glory. In wonder and
Well, there's a lot of
surrender we
energy in
fall
the high
down.
bass, low mid range, but instead of just gutting it with
Show
a low
us
cut.
your
Let's just
glory.
use a small band just to control it.
Show us your glory. Let every burning heart be holy ground.
Control the nasal area of the voice.
Show us your glory. Show us your glory. In wonder and surrender we fall down.
Again, just controlling the dynamics.
Show us your glory. Show
If you have a
us
good
your
room,
glory.
stereo capable room that has
Let
fairly good
every
spread, you can also
burning
pan
heart
the
be
maybe the
holy
harmonies in
ground.
different ways just to give them a little bit extra separation.
Show us your glory.
Show us your glory. In wonder and surrender we
Where we
fall
were.
down. Show us your glory.
Really pokey and boxy
Show
and forward.
us your glory. Let every burning heart be
A lot more clear
holy
and open.
ground.
Let's continue on to the drums. For every head drum, you're basically looking for the fundamental and the clarity, and that's it, nothing else. So, for example, the kick drum. Fundamental is around 40 to 50. So double the fundamental in nearly every head drum is often noise and just gunk. So let's listen to about double, which is 100-ish. This is really resonant, kind of nasty noise that doesn't need to be there. It's already a way tighter sound. We use a low cut just to kind of clean up that low end just a little bit. And all this mid-range, we can gut. We don't need any of this mid-range. All this papery resonant noise, we don't need any of it. We can get the cymbals out by using a high cut, and we're going to accent the beater attack, which is around 2K to 5K. Compression for drums, generally only a little bit at the very top of the dynamic range, just in case they hit it too hard, it'll start squishing. But other than that, we want a lot of the dynamics of the drums to go through freely. Snare drum, very similar. Find the fundamentals. Fundamental around 180. Low cut to there. And let's find double the fundamental. This really resonant, papery kind of noise we can get rid of. All this mid-range, again, we can gut. I started under-miking my snares exclusively because if you top mic, you can end up with too little snare sound. If you under-mic, you can end up with too much, but I'd rather have too much snare sound and be able to reduce it rather than to have too little and have to gun it up or just not have any enough, not have any at all. Kind of get that stick clap out of there just to make it a bit tighter and less abrasive. It's around 2K to 3K. We can also probably boost the fundamental a bit just to give it a little more punch and power. Compression, again, just at the very top of the range. And for reverb, I want to extend the sound of the snares. So it's not just ka, it's ka. So it's a bright reverb. And I'm extending the sound of the snares. For the toms, again, very similar to the kick drum. So looking for the fundamental, which is around 90 to 100, low cut before then, and double the fundamental. That resonant frequency coming through afterwards. Short cut that. Cut the mid-range, cut the highs, find that stick attack. It's around 2K to 5K. And again, just at the very top of the dynamic range, compression. Floor tom, same thing. This is a not great floor tom, but it's a realistic floor tom. Find the fundamental, which is not there. It's actually around 50 to 60. Let's gut out that double the fundamental. It's just all this resonant noise we don't need. Gut out the mid-range, cut the highs, find the stick attack. In fact, we can actually boost that fundamental a bit. Again, just the very top of the dynamic range. For cymbals, I'm basically just gutting everything below 1 kilohertz. Listen for the worst part, the worst sound part of the cymbal. Most unpleasant area. Compression, I really don't use compression on cymbals. Got everything below 1K. The worst part of the cymbal. And there we go, drums are done. Let's move on to the chordal instruments, piano. I've mixed expensive Nords, I've mixed junky Roland keyboards. All of them need fairly hefty mid-range cuts. Let's go ahead and start with that mid-range cut. This is nasal area, all of it in 1 kilohertz. And again, it's not a great keyboard, it's not a great arrangement, but I'm going to work with what I have. Low cut, just kind of get that kind of rumbly noise out. Rather than, again, cutting the bass as a whole, we're going to use a small band cut just to tame the bass. If you're looking for bands that are kind of covering up the sounds, this boxy kind of range. We get this noise out at the high end. And the clarity of a piano is around 3K to 5K. And just controlling the dynamic range, 3 to 1-ish, soften. Bass guitar, very similar to kick drum. We're looking for the fundamental and the stick attack. Now, most bass guitars I've mixed sound more like this, where there's actually hardly any high-end information. That's actually what's going to contextualize the sound as a bass guitar, not just a low pulse out of nowhere. That pick attack is going to contextualize it as a bass guitar. So, small low cut just to get the noise out below. And kind of give it a low mid-range cut. And all this mid-range up here we can also cut. Pull the high cut up to get that noise out. And maybe we can give a little bit of a boost to the fundamentals. Normally I would have to add in a pretty hefty boost around 3K to 5K, but this bass doesn't need that. Compression just to get those transients down a bit, or if he maybe slaps the bass, it'll pull those transients down some. If your electric guitarist is playing cowboy chords and he's playing really dense, heavy rhythms, just along with like the bass and piano, it's not going to be great. It's going to be horrible. Electric guitar really needs to play past maybe the 5th or 7th fret with broken chords. Otherwise, it's going to be way too dense in the bass and low mid-range information. So, a good guitarist can kind of make or break the expressiveness and the melodic quality of your band. Clean up the low end. Clean up the high end. Generally around 2K to 3K, there's a very sharp band of like the pick resonance or like the room resonance that's just really sharp and abrasive. Finding that and then cutting that sharp is very important. compression, electric guitars are naturally extremely compressed, so you really don't have to do a whole lot. Maybe just if they hit a pedal and their volume goes really loud for some reason, the compressor will just hold that down a bit. Acoustic guitar. I've mixed Taylors, Martins, and I've mixed crappy Fenders, Washburns. Pretty much all of them need fairly hefty mid-range cuts. Low cut just to clean up the low ends. And again, like the piano, instead of gutting the low end as a whole, be kind of unnatural. Let's just control the low end by doing a band cut. All this nasal area up here, we just don't need that. Maybe control that boxy sound as well. We're basically looking for a melodic hi-hat. Kind of find that plink sound. Compression, very even compression at a low ratio. And just a little bit of reverb just to spice it up, give it a little bit extra magic. Backing tracks. If you bought them for like multi-tracks or loop community, generally they won't need anything. Maybe just a little bit of sweetener to work with your band in your room. Maybe the track is pitched down a little bit, so you want to... The track is pitched down a bit, so you want to kind of clean up maybe the low end a little bit, just get it got pitched down. Maybe you want to add just a little bit extra brightness and air. Maybe you want to cut, because maybe you have plenty of guitar emphasis in the mid-range, so maybe you give a little bit of cut to the mid-range. Just depends on your room, your players, your instrumentation. So, okay, so now we're ready to actually pull together a mix. So we're going to start with drums. And if you have a good stereo setup room, you can pan your toms a bit. I mean, 30%, you'll still be able to hear it. Even if you're on the opposite side, you'll still be able to hear 30%. That way the toms kind of go across the speakers. Let's add the vocals.
Show us your glory. Let every burning heart be holy ground. Show us your glory. Show us your glory.
And now we're going to pull the rest of the band up to them. And we're going to try to avoid bringing the whole volume of the band together. We're going to try to avoid bringing the volume up. We're going to try to bring the band up to the rest of the vocals and the drums.
Show us your glory. Show us your glory. In wonder and surrender we fall down. Show us your glory. Show us your glory. Show us your glory. In wonder and surrender we show us.
You could maybe pan the piano a little bit just to separate it from the guitar, since they're both fairly heavy mid-range instruments.
Show
Your tracks are going to fill in the spaces between the instruments. So like a guitar has a transient, piano has a transient where we blah and the sound dies down, or ting and the sound dies down. Tracks, especially in this case with soft synths, they're just ah, they're constant, so they help fill in those spaces. They kind of glue the band together.
Show us your glory. Show us your
Out.
glory. In wonder and surrender we fall down.
at this point, you can go to your master bus and maybe correct overall problems with your mix, or correct problems with your room. Maybe your room is really resonant at 200 hertz. Maybe your speakers have a spike at 5 kilohertz, and so you correct those problems with your room EQ. We can also use a bit of compression on our master output just to kind of bring the bubble, kind of square up the bubble bit, make it a little smoother. So right now the bubble's kind of jagged. If you listen, there's kind of sharp edges to the sound, if that makes sense. So a little bit of compression, very light ratio, a soft knee with at a very high threshold relative to the sound. Helps to keep things a little bit more glued and a little more round. And if you're working broadcasts, using stereo ambience mics from the room is huge to get a cohesive sound. I don't have stereo ambience mics for this recording, so I'm going to simulate it by using a reverb. So this is what it sounds like. As well, if you're working broadcast, you can watch your output meter, and many people shoot for like a certain LUFS reading. I say just pump it as loud as you can without clipping. So I kind of watch that and I see what my loudest point is. So I was at -8 decibels, which means I can give it about 8 decibels or 7 if I'm being safe. So I actually turn my listening volume down. I can also add a little bit of extra bump on my compression. And that's it. I hope this was useful to kind of see some starting points. And again, these aren't rules. It's just kind of a crash course on EQ, compression, what to listen for, kind of the techniques to use to EQ and compress things, and kind of what you're looking for. So, thanks for watching. Peace.